Start. Oh, never mind.
Let me just make sure this is recording. Yes, we are recording.
Yes, okay. I see the recording button on my end as well.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, I guess I should say. Welcome to the third Teacher Wellness series of a four-part series. Today, we're going to be talking about self-care. My name is Lindsay Eidman, and I'm a therapist with Mary Center School-Based Mental Health Program, and I'm located at Lincoln Middle School.
My name is Adriana Rossel. I am a school-based therapist at Mary Center, and I'm located at Capital City Public Charter School within the high school.
And Mary Center is currently in 23 schools. We have a team of 41 therapists and community support workers, and we're in public and public charter schools, and we're excited to be here with you all today.
All right, so we're going to be talking about a few different things today. First, we're going to be defining what self-care is and helping people through the process of evaluating your own self-care practices. Then we're going to consider some aspects of burnout, hopefully provide some self-care tips and resources that you guys can access. And then lastly, we're going to be defining compassion fatigue and identity and its warning signs. So if anyone's interested, please feel free to comment in the chat box or to unmute yourself if you would like to comment. All right, so before we really dive into those topics that I just listed, I wanted to start by just offering you guys a moment to reflect. Many of you may have been sitting all day or sitting all week, and so giving our mind and our bodies some time to settle in. So we're going to do a little bit of chair yoga. You can stand up or you can sit, whatever's better for your body right now. Well, regardless if you're standing or sitting, take a moment to straighten your back out so your shoulders are up, back, and down, pretending that there's a pin drawing your head up so you're nice and straight. Let out all the breath from your belly, breathing out. And then as you start to breathe in through your nose, bring your shoulders up to your ears. And as you exhale, allow them to roll back and down. Inhaling up and exhaling down. 2 more times. On your next inhale, allow your arms to rise all the way up so your shoulders are directly below your wrist. Take your right hand and grab your left wrist and lean over to the side. Feeling the stretch from pinky all the way to hip from your extended arm. On your next inhale, bring yourself all the way back up. Grab your opposite wrist, and as you exhale, lean over in the opposite direction. On your next inhale, bring your torso all the way back up. Let go of your wrists, and as you exhale, slowly lower your arms down by your sides. Take a deep breath in through your nose. As you exhale, bring your left ear down towards your left shoulder, creating space on the right side of your neck. On your next exhale, allow your head to roll forward, your chin towards your chest. On your next inhale, bring your right ear towards your right shoulder, this time creating space on the left side of your neck. Inhale your head back up to a neutral position. Let out all the breath. And take one last deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. Thank you for participating in that, and we'll go ahead and get started.
Thank you, Adriana. I feel much more relaxed.
Good.
All right, so to start, we're gonna look first at this and talk a little bit about self-care and what it is. So when we talk about self-care, there's different strategies or different dimensions of self-care that we often talk about. That incorporates mind, body, emotions, spirit, as well as work and relationships. So it's not just about yoga and eating healthy food. It's about kind of what we're doing to take care of ourselves in all aspects of our life. And this is a self-care plan worksheet that we're going to include a link to in the resource page. So you'll be able to complete this on your own, hopefully before the next session, part 4 of the series, where they'll be taking a deeper dive into self-care and what it is. So these are just kind of some of the important categories that we have when we think about self-care. And self-care during COVID-19. These are just some questions for reflection when we're thinking about how we're taking care of ourselves during this time. And of course, self-care looks different for everyone. So what works for one person is not going to work for the next person. So just take some minutes to reflect on these questions, and I'll read them out loud. And feel free to write if you want to write a few things that are coming to your mind as you're thinking about these. Share in the chat box if there's something that comes to you when you're thinking about these questions, or just think in your own head kind of what comes up for you. So what did self-care look like for you before COVID-19? And what about now? I'll just give you a minute just to kind of think about that. And then the next questions for reflection are, what is missing in your self-care practice? Or what does your self-care practice now include that it didn't before? And finally, how can you adjust and check in with yourself to see what might work now, what you might be able to do differently now? Just acknowledging that COVID-19 has changed the ways that we do participate and take care of ourselves, that oftentimes before COVID-19, we would go out to have a drink after work with coworkers, or go to our favorite restaurant, or go to a yoga class with other people. And now those type of activities we might not be able to do for a while. So just thinking about and rethinking about, what might work now, and just kind of adjusting. And it's okay that the things that used to work might not work now, and that's okay. Just accepting that and figuring out new strategies.
All right. So a little bit about confronting burnout. At the end, there'll be a resource on confronting burnout and different aspects of it, and you'll see some of these questions pop up as well. There's many other questions that you can think about when thinking about burnout, but please take a few minutes to read over these, see what resonates with you and what connects with you. And are there any that you're connecting with more now that you're in your home a lot more? Maybe you're in your home 7 days a week and you don't really get the opportunity to leave at all, right? So what sticks out to you? And I think that as you all reflect, that there's some that are really pertinent now during COVID. Feeling that I'm achieving less than I should, right? What is achievement in this world where we're in a pandemic, where these new social things going on that we aren't accustomed to, of being at home, of wearing masks. And how does that affect your spirit and your energy? All right. So our next slide here is, who do you choose to be during COVID? And you'll notice that there are 3 different zones: the fear zone, the learning zone, and the growth zone. And I want to give everyone just about 30 seconds to read over that, and then we'll talk a little bit more. So looking over the fear zone, the learning zone, and the growth zone. So you'll notice that in the fear zone, there are things like I panic buy, right? In the learning zone, there are things like I start to let go of control. And then finally in the growth zone, you find I'm living now with a clear picture of what's next. These zones, I don't believe that you go from one to the next they're not necessarily linear. You might be learning and then you might go back to fear, and that's okay. But which zone do you find yourself in right now? And how can we change if we're not aware, right? So taking the time to think, where am I? What's going on today versus last week? If you're interested in making a change, if you're interested in getting closer to a growth zone during our current life situation. And if we don't slow down to look at this, to ponder, to question ourselves, how are we really going to know what we need? I think this can absolutely be a challenge. So I definitely recommend that people come back to this. It's definitely an interesting place to look and go from step to step.
For sure.
All right.
So let's take a look at this slide, and I'm going to move our heads to the side so people can see more easily the cartoons. Let me see. Oh, here we go. Okay. Move our little heads that I have here in the corner. Okay, so there's 2 cartoons here, and they represent 2 really common things that I've heard from teachers that they are experiencing right now, just because of the COVID-19 environment that we're in, the stories that they're hearing from students and staff members, and maybe what they're going through themselves. And the accumulation of all of that is causing either vicarious trauma, where a lot of teachers are hearing from students whose families have come down with COVID-19. They're hearing, what that's like for those families, and taking that on internally, which can be, it can be a lot for a teacher who's also trying to conduct a virtual classroom and do lots of other things. So we have Lassie here who's just struggling. Lassie get help, and then Lassie needs his own therapy to kind of manage how he's feeling. And then we also have compassion fatigue, where teachers might be hearing these stories over and over and over again, and at a certain point it kind of is just they're just not able to take in and be as compassionate, as alert, as there, as present with each student. So that can create kind of this burnout. And a lot of you all are dealing with that because you're also managing internal stressors in your own families and the environment where you're in, dealing with school stuff. So there's just a lot. And so, we work in DC with a population that is dealing with a lot. So we ourselves might be dealing with a lot, and then through them, we're dealing with a lot. So next week's presentation is going to go into this a lot more, talking about how we can be compassionate with ourselves, take care of ourselves, and how that really plays a role in our ability to continue doing this work and to avoid burnout, to avoid vicarious trauma, what we can do to really take care of ourselves when we notice these things. And it all really connects to, a really good book that they're going to talk about more in depth next week, called Trauma Stewardship, and that's also in the references, just that talks a lot about these topics. So let's see. And then one of the themes that is talked about in this book is stress-resistant people, which sounds ideal, right? I want to be one of those people. So this famous psychiatrist whose name is Bessel van der Kolk, he wrote a book called Psychological Trauma, and in it he talked about common traits of stress-resistant people. So that would be like people who are able to integrate experiences of stress and trauma into their lives and adapt, be okay, keep moving, keep going. So he found some commonalities among these people. He found that they had a sense of personal control. So they perceived a connection between their own actions and how they felt. They were able to believe in their own capacity to influence their lives and kind of move forward and take this on. He also found that these stress-resistant people had a common pursuit of meaningful tasks. So that to him meant that they were present and engaged in their lives. They are active versus passive in stressful times. And then healthy lifestyle choices was another common trait of these stress-resistant people. So, that could mean different things for different people, whether it's relaxation, exercise, taking care of your mind, taking care of your body in whatever way it makes sense. The stress-resistant people had that in common. And then finally, social supports. So relationships with others helped these people through the stressful situations and helped them be resilient despite the stressors. So they're going to kind of take a deeper dive again next week on this, but this is kind of what we all aspire to, what we all hope to. But I think the reality of the situation we have right now is a little bit different, right? So here, on the left is what we would hope for, right? Like, I'm resilient, I got this, everything's great. On the right is sometimes what you as teachers and, myself included, might be managing in your personal lives. You are trying to conduct a virtual classroom. You have kids hanging on you. You're trying to eat. You're trying to provide childcare. You're trying to talk to your students, connect to your students, call your students, see what's going on in their lives, talk to their parents, get them resources. So there's so many things that we're dealing with. And I just want to encourage everyone that, we might not be those perfect stress resistant people right now, but we are still resilient despite all of the different stressors that are coming at us. You all are very resilient. You're here, you're doing it. It's not going to be perfect, and that's okay. And part of just kind of taking care of ourselves is just accepting that, like, it's okay not to be at 100%, and just still acknowledging your own strength, your inner strength, that you're getting through a really challenging situation. That goes on to our next slide.
So thinking about getting through challenging situations and kind of where we want to be and who we want to be, we want to take some time to talk about boundaries. And this first kind of quote that we have here, I'm not sure who said it, but it's been floating around the internet. You guys might have already seen it. This idea that you're not working from home, you're at home during a crisis, a pandemic, right? And you're trying to work. And so really working on restructuring kind of what our situation is in our mind. It's not, a holiday, the school was closed, but you had some work to do, so you're at home on your computer working. No, there's a pandemic going on and you're at home and you're working. And so keeping that in mind, what are some realistic boundaries that you want to set for yourself? Or maybe you're already setting and you want to keep up if you've already done that. So similar to earlier, we have a few questions for you guys to reflect on. We'll put them up one by one and I'll read them out, and we'll give you 45 seconds, a minute to reflect. You can always come back to these questions later on. So Lindsay, you can put up the first one. Thank you. So the first question, what do boundaries mean to you? And take a moment to create a definition. What is your boundary? All right, our next question is, what are your boundaries? So now that you have your definition, think about a little bit, what are these boundaries that you're starting to set or that maybe you aspire to set? All right, our next question is, how does your body and mind tell you when you're feeling overwhelmed? And have you crossed some of your own boundaries? Okay, so sometimes we set up boundaries with other people, and sometimes we set up boundaries with ourselves, excuse me. Um, so how can you listen to your body and communicate with it to know if you've crossed some of your own boundaries? All right, our last question on boundaries is, how do you ask for help when this happens? So if you've noticed that you've crossed one of your own boundaries, or maybe someone's crossing a boundary that you've set, how can you reach out for support? So I definitely think that all four of these questions are questions that, we could spend 15, 20 minutes easily on individually. So I recommend that if you have the time and the interest, that you come back to some of these questions. But for right now, we wanted to share with you some tips on boundaries for our current work environment. So one can be setting a dedicated workspace. I'll share with you guys that I live in a very small apartment. But even so, I don't have a separate office. I don't have a desk for my workspace, but I try to set up every day at the beginning of the day, and then I take down, I hide my computer, I hide my phone, I put it all in a corner, right, to kind of create that boundary for myself. Some other things you might look at, one that I'm personally working on, is how to turn off social media. At what time are you turning that off and setting that boundary? And maybe social media, not only just for yourself, but if your students are texting you or they're calling you, at what point do you stop answering the phone? Thinking a little bit if working on the weekends is helpful or if it's harmful for you. Is it possible for you to fit in breaks during your workday? Even just 5 minutes here or there. Maybe you can take a full lunch hour, right? What is it like to set up those breaks for yourself during the day? And the last two that I think are really pertinent are, what are your expectations for yourself, and are they realistic for your current working environment? And then what does productivity look like during this? Your lesson plans when you're in the classroom versus your lesson plans when they're online might be pretty different. So what is productivity now? What are the expectations that are reasonable and appropriate for this current environment? All right, go to our next slide. So our last slide for you guys today is a little bit on gratitude. So there's been some research done on gratitude. It's not causational, but we do know that there could be a correlation, that expressing gratitude on a regular basis can be really helpful. Some benefits in different studies that have found is that it can help increase our happiness. It can make us more productive at work. Speaking of work, can give us a higher life satisfaction. So I want to ask everyone today to spend a minute or two, and we'll have some moments of silence here, to reflect on some things that you're grateful for. Um, yeah. What are some things, specific things that you are grateful for? All right. Hopefully, everyone was able to think of one or two things. And if that was something that was enjoyable, or if it felt good to be grateful for something and kind of voice that, I definitely recommend that maybe you consider starting a gratitude journal or a gratitude practice where you wake up and you say one thing that you're grateful for in the morning or before you go to bed, just kind of voicing and giving space for positive energy and gratitude in your life.
All right. So finally, as we end here today, we just wanted to leave you all with some further resources because we really took a really quick snapshot of this topic of self-care and self-compassion. And part 4 of the Teacher Wellness Workshop will dive in a little bit deeper on it. But also, there's so much that you can read, so many resources out there that have so much great information. So we just wanted to take some time to kind of highlight some of those. Here's the burnout self-test, which we shared in the presentation, my maintenance self-care plan as well, Calm Schools Initiative, also just encouraging people, if therapy is a way that you get your self-care, Psychology Today is a resource for finding a therapist. These are the 2 books that we mentioned and talked about. And then some other just resources that we have. Some apps that are really good for relaxation. Some of them are free for educators. And just some other resources, including TED Talks, other compilations of resources that have been created. And if you have any questions, feel free to email either of us, and we're happy to speak to you further, send you a copy of the PowerPoint if you want to be able to click on some of the links. I'll share at the very end, I'll pull up the first screen, which has our emails on it, just for all of you who are watching this recording, so that you can feel free to reach out if you have further questions. And then here's some references for everything that we talked about today. Let me just pull up the first slide, which I believe has our emails. So yeah, so here at the bottom, you can see our emails. L. Eidman at marycenter.org, A. Rossel at marycenter.org. Feel free to reach out if you have further questions, would like a copy of the PowerPoint so that you can get the links to the different resources, or if you just have any questions at all, we're here to support and help. Anything else?
I don't think so. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in.